Worm castings are used in both houseplants and garden plants all the time, and it's not something I've ever done myself. I've always bought worm castings as a product. So what I thought I'd do is buy my very first wormery. I'd start using my own household scraps to feed the worms, and then build up a nice amount of worm castings to use in my garden. Now, worm castings don't have a massive amount of nutrient value, so the NPK value is not that high, but they are a huge source of mycorrhizal fungi and a good source of organic matter for both your houseplants and gardens. So I went ahead, I went online and bought my first wormery, and this is my first 9 months with that wormery. So parcel's arrived. So this is the wormery. I've split it open, but I haven't got everything out of it yet. So let's take a look. So building your own tiger wormery. So they're called red wrigglers, I believe, the worms that I've got here. But that's the one that I'm building there. So 3 trays, and we'll go through the instructions bit by bit and make sure we've got it all set up correctly. So that's the instructions. And then in here, let's get some of this packaging out. So this would be the lime. So you need the lime to, if you put anything too much citrus or anything like that, it can make the whole wormery too acidic, so that helps you bit by bit over time. You've got the cocoa coir, so obviously a coir block, so that'll just be soaked, and that'll surely be in the instructions. And then there's a pack of 1 pack of worms. Actually, I didn't realise the worms came with this. I've got 500 grams of worms separate to this. So I mean, these guys they look quite lethargic at this point. Yeah, they've been in here for quite some time now, so we need to get these out and get them aerated. So I didn't realise they were in there. Yeah, they're all still alive. They're all absolutely fine. So, and then from the box point of view, we've got the tap, which is for the bottom. That's to let the worm tea out at the bottom of it. And then we've got the legs, individual leg parts. 1, 2, 3, 4 legs. Bring them out of the way. And then obviously the lid. I think. Is it the lid or is that the drainer? Actually no, that's the drainer, that's the base. And that's the slots for the legs. So we'll put those on in a moment. Last bit here is 1 tray, and then like a sieve tray, and then this is the screen tray. So I'll go through this bit by bit, and there's a screen there with the drain, so that obviously is right for the bottom. So let's work through the individual instructions bit by bit, and then we'll set it up as per the instructions and see how we go on. So one of the first things I need to do is get the drainer in. So this comes like with a screw on the top like this, and then there's a washer. You bring that off, and then you just pop that in there. And if you can see on this camera, then that needs to go back on there on this side, like so. And then, oh look, Dennis wants to play. And then basically just screw that in. So you'll see in a moment. And that's got a nice tight seal on it, so that'll be the drain off that we get will be like so, so it won't leak out without this tap being turned. So that's that bit, so that's easy enough. And then next we'll just take the legs, and we'll just, these are super easy to do, so we just snap these on one by one. So this is quite quick to assemble, to be honest with you. There we go. So that's the base all set up with the drain tap. So that looks fine. I don't think we've got any issues with that. So we'll just put that on the side there. And then I'll just put some weight on it, just to make sure that's good. And then we get this screen. So this is a wire frame and then the screen bag. So that goes in there, and that will drain, that will basically strain off anything that drops through for the liquid. And then obviously then we're going to start loading in the worms. But first of all, what I need to do is go and soak the coir for 3 hours, and then that will go in there, and then we can start doing everything else. So as I said, we've got to take the coir and we've got to soak this for 3 or 4 hours. So we'll just take the block and then we're going to fill it full of just normal water. We're going to get the watering can and we're just going to go about halfway up, maybe a bit more, and we'll just let that sit and expand, and then we'll see how that goes in a few hours time. Okay, so let's put it all together. So we've got the base and we've got the screen in. I'll just tip it out. So the base with the legs and the tap ready to go. Tap is obviously closed. We've got the wire frame and the screen that goes underneath the tray. And then we're gonna load one of the trays up like this. So you can see the screen underneath here. That stops the worms getting down through. And obviously any liquid will drain through and make the worm tea down at the bottom that you can drain off. So the next thing we need to do is we've soaked the coir now, and it's damp, but it's not in any way dripping, so it's just moist, or just enough. You know, you can't squeeze any liquid out of it, which is how it needs to be. So what we'll do is we'll start layering this in. First of all, we'll get a few in, just make sure there's not any that's too damp. And if there is, down at the bottom there's a bit, so I'm going to squeeze that out. No, there isn't any of that. So I'm just laying it in until I can get to the point where I can tip it in, like so. There we go. And it is a bit damp at the bottom, so I think what I'll do is I will squeeze it out at the bottom. So just make sure, like so. You can see there the bit at the bottom is a bit damp, so we'll squeeze that out because we don't want that very, very wet coir going in. It's only the bottom really. So last one, and then we'll leave the rest. There you go. And then what we want to do is just spread that out. It's not very deep at this point, but obviously it will be at some point. And then what I've got is I've got the worms. So these are as I said, the red. They come 500 grams of them come with the pack. So so these are the worms that I've got. They're red wrigglers, tiger worms, and I've just kept them in this box for a few days. As you can see, they're like this. So nice and healthy. They've warmed up a bit from when they were travelling to me. And I've got way too many here. I've ended up with, they send you 500, and I already had some on the way from someone else. So I've got something in the region of 1.5 kilograms of them, which is way too much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to see how they go. If there's too many, I'm going to split them into 2 of these. So as you can see there. So I'm just going to handful at a time. They're just in. This is just this was a moist compost mix that I kept them in. So I'm just going to pop them in all over, And you can see bits of food in here. This was stuff that I'd had in with them while I was just looking after them, you know, since they arrived. In fact, what we'll do now, I'm just going to tip it in actually. Got to the point now where there's no point in doing it hand by hand. And then the bits of food that are in there, I'm going to put all the food in one corner. So let me just push these guys around a bit. So I'll spread them right through the mix. You can still see them there. There's like, let's see if how wiggly they are. And they're all alive. And some of them are, you know, more active than others. So there's some small ones in there. They've been in the warm for a few days actually, and they probably, I don't know if it does them any harm, but yeah, they're all right. Maybe being in the warm is not the best thing for them, so I'm going to move them out to a cooler area after I've done this. So that's the worms, that's the coir, and obviously there's a bit of soil in there now, which is probably not the best. But it's in there, so it is what it is. And then the last thing we need is some food. So I've been collecting up scraps of food like lettuce and cabbage and rotting stuff, and then I've put some cardboard in there and ripped up some cardboard as well. And this has been rotting down for a good few days. So I'm going to tip all of this into two corners because I've got so many worms. I'm going to split it from this corner and this opposite corner here. So they are surface feeders, but I'm not going to spread it on the top. I'm just going to leave it in the corner so I can see how much they're eating. So we'll put that in that corner there. And there you go. So, you know, you've got this cardboard that's damp. They will munch through that. And they've got about, now because of the soil, they've got about 3 inches of depth. You can see there from above. They've got a fair bit of depth to play with there. So they should be fine. And then the last thing I'm going to do, just for now, is I've got 2 more trays, if you remember. And these trays sink inside each other. So if you see this, it comes down almost to the surface. And then this is the bit that confused me at first, is I'm like, well, how does it work in terms, if these trays just slide one inside each other, there's no room. What happens is as it fills up underneath, this will get higher and higher until this lower tray is full. So eventually your stack will be 3 high like that, you know, and by that time this bottom one, all of the worms will have moved up through the middle one and then eventually up to the top one, and the bottom will be completely just worm castings. So for now we just drop these 2 in like so, and then last thing, we just pop on the lid, and that's the complete wormery done. So today is the 25th of January. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it like that, and I'm going to put it somewhere cooler than this, but not outside in there because it's minus temperatures at the minute. And then what we'll do is we'll check it again in late February and see how they've done and see what's happening in there. So here we are, this is June the 21st, so we've still got the 3 layers. So in the top, I just keep bits of rotten food that go into the trays, and then here in the tray, I've had to fill up a second tray now because this bottom one is completely full. So I'll show you that in a moment. So these bits here are bits of coconut matting, and they seem to be lasting. I mean, they're lasting, they're still here, but they're falling apart already, and they really help cover over and keep the worms and the rotting food damp. But you can see here how healthy it is. So they're all doing, this is where I keep the food, just at one end, and it's all rotten and, you know, rotting down. You know, they seem to be doing really well. And I am finding that this matting, which you just get off Amazon, is really helpful. It does break down in no time. You think it doesn't when you get it, but as you can see, it just keeps a nice layer on the top. So let me just lift this layer off and I'll show you what's going on underneath. So this layer is full and done. So this is the layer we started back at the start of it. And this now is virtually, most of the worms have migrated up. And what I've got here is literally just the best worm castings you can get. It's about 4 inches deep, and pretty much everything is broken down. So as you can see, there's not the most amount of worms in there now. They've definitely migrated. And what I'm finding is, in those first few weeks and months, I did lose a few through the bottom. They started wiggling down and getting into the water at the bottom, but that's just stopped happening now. I get maybe 3 or 4 at a time, ones that have just dropped through. But there's getting, as each time I look in here, there's getting less and less worms, and as they go up for more food. So they've probably, they're getting to the point where they've exhausted this layer. And believe it or not, there's no coconut matting at all. It's all completely eaten away, gone completely inside. Now this is wetter than I have had it most of the way. This is very, very wet. That's because last night we had a massive downfall. We had like a summer storm, and it got down the sides quite a lot. So it doesn't kill them. I mean, there's no drownings or anything like that, but it's definitely wetter than I would want it. So lifted off the last layer, and as you can see, little bits of sludge get through. 3 or 4 worms every time. So I just go along, scrape those 3 or 4 up, throw them back in one of the top layers, and then underneath there's this brown goo here. So there's normally not this much in here. This is literally because of the rain. And then you can drain that off there and either use it or get rid of it, or have it going down the drain, which is what I sometimes do if there's too much. And I just spray this off, which you don't even need to do really, but it's, if that's what you want to do, you can clean that off each time. So let's just put it back together, just stack each one back. Now that's probably ready now to use, that bottom layer, but I'm just going to leave that for a little bit longer. And I don't quite know what the right time to put the next layer on is, because I'm finding if there's too much in it, this lets water in at the side. So I suppose this is about right. So where it's, the level is about 3 or 4 inches in the bottom tray. But I reckon another few weeks, and I reckon this top tray will be ready. I'm feeding them every week at the minute in the summer, so I'm ready to use tray 3. So here we are, September the 18th. So we're well into the year when we started this project. So the bins are all full. So let me just show you the top one, which is the top of 3. So this one is, let me just show you, it's got some corn in it there. Look at the amount of worms we've got here now. Look, it's crazy. So these are all now being, basically they just breed. So things like a big chunk of corn I find really works for the breeders. So I still leave big chunks like that. I started putting tons of cardboard in because they tend to devour that within like a matter of days. There's a few little weird things like little growths like this, but they soon get devoured and disappear. And you can see lots of little seeds here coming through. But generally speaking, even this top, whatever I put in, they're just eating it now. So let's go down one layer. We've got all 3 full, so just bear with me while I lift this with 2 hands. So here's the layer down. Absolutely, it's still got worms in it, but this is pretty good compost already. There's still plenty to eat in here, so this isn't a layer that I'm going to use at all. But it's just got to do its final, maybe another couple of months of just getting processed, and this one will be absolutely fine. We can see a lot of cardboard in there, so this is when I started adding a lot more of that cocoa fibre and cardboard to help. One thing was to dry it out a little bit sometimes, and another reason was to just add different things into the mix. So that went well. So let's go down to the 3rd layer and see what we've got. And here we go, the magic stuff. So this is what I would call ready to go. So we started this at the end of January. It's now the end of September, and we are literally churning out perfect worm castings here. So there's hardly any worms in it. 1 or 2 you can see there. They've moved up through the layers. So there always seems to be worms. You can't get rid of them all, obviously, but the amount of them has moved up to where the food is. And this is ready for harvesting now, so it's good quality, really, really nice worm casting. So I mean, I would mix this with perlite and make, you know, this would be a normal potting compost, and you've got really nice soil. So this is what I would call a huge success. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to add more bins actually, and then see how that goes. I hope you're liking these videos, and if you are, please give us a thumbs up, because it does help us to get in front of other people that might like this kind of content. And if you like this video enough to give it a thumbs up, then why not subscribe to the channel